Hello, and welcome to the Alchemists Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
And I'm KristaLyn. And today we have an amazing guest, Alyson LaRue. Alyson Rose LaRue. Alyson, why don't you tell us how you like to be introduced?
I'm fine with Alyson LaRue, Alyson Rose. Like, that's just my middle name, but you can call me whatever.
Perfect.
So Alyson is not only super knowledgeable on spiritual stuff and also on natural forms of like ADHD medication and all sorts of fun stuff that we're going to talk about, but she's also the back end of this podcast. She is also the person you don't see that makes this podcast pretty. She helps us with it and is incredible. So will you tell everybody about yourself a little bit? I just wanted to give you credit where credit's due, because the reason it's good is because you make it happy.
Oh, stop. Thank you. I absolutely love it. So I just want to say that. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me be your editor. I absolutely love it. But yeah, I'm Alyson. I do a lot of different things because, I mean, we'll get into it. ADHD. So I get bored quick. So I like to do a lot of things all of the time. But mainly I do podcasts and video editing. I do other fun things on the side here and there, but besides that, I do content creation because I love to make videos aside from editing them for other people. And I talk a lot about ADHD, trauma, taking care of ourselves, learning how to do that as people who weren't taught how to. Those are two big things I'm talking a lot about on my channels right now, is ADHD and then, learning to take care of ourselves. But I talk about anything that's on my mind. So it's just really, I never really say what my niche is because I'm the niche. I'm like, whatever I'm feeling that day, that's what we're going to get.
I feel like we need a t-shirt. I'm the niche.
Literally. Oh my God,
like
I'd love that.
Boss Babe t-shirts turn into the I'm the niche t-shirts.
Exactly.
That's so much better. I love it.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting thing. Like over the last 3 years or so, a lot of people seem to have really started embracing their spirituality, and almost hand in hand with that, a lot of people have really started to acknowledge, understand, and embrace their neurodiversity. And
Absolutely.
so, there's this journey that seems like they walk side by side, but to me, there's probably a little bit of a double helix kind of intermingling going there. And you are someone who has been able to really walk this world and get validation through diagnoses, through, using materials that help you and support you. Tell us a little bit about your journey with how these two things have emerged for you, especially over the last few years, but just in general.
Yeah, I love this question because it's something I've never really thought about before. Like, obviously, I've thought about these two things separately, but then together I was like, that is an excellent topic to think about. So yeah, I knew I was spiritual long before I knew I was neurodivergent. Growing up, I am very lucky. I am a firm believer, and I like to view all of the things I experience as just like, that's kind of cool, even if I thought they sucked in the moment. But I got sort of a lot of different life experiences growing up. My parents were divorced, so I got my dad's whole thing, my mom's whole thing, and then I was also raised by my grandparents. So I got like 3 different walks of life there, which was really cool. My dad was Christian. My mom was just like anything she wanted to be, which is where I get a lot of it from. Spiritual, like, she did her own thing. She loved spirits. And I'm like, okay, girl, whatever you want. I'm 3, but this is awesome. And then my grandparents were just like, kid, we don't care what you do. Just like be a good person. So I was really lucky in just getting to figure that out for myself. And growing up, I was always like, I'm vibing with this spirituality thing. I don't know what it means yet. Don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And I think for me, one of the big similarities between the two of them is just growing up, especially as a neurodivergent person, I feel like, and among the other people with ADHD that I've talked to, we all have this sense of just wanting to be understood. And especially existing in a society built by and for neurotypical people, it's like, what is this even? Like, this does not make any sense to me, and none of you people get me. So what's going on here? So I was always searching for this sense of just like validation and being understood. And spirituality was that first thing for me. It was like not too structured because that didn't work for my brain. I got to find my own place within it and just research and learn and dig into like what feels good to me. And that was awesome, because your whole life, at least for me, I got told this is what you have to do. This is what has to work for you. And my brain's like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. So with spirituality, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then, astrology and just all of these things where you're like, they get me, they understand me. This is incredible. It was really like, I can only explain it as like welcoming. Like I was like, I'm at home. Never felt this way before, but like I'm home. And then similarly with my, whole diagnosis journey, that in itself was just like the most validating thing I've ever experienced, because growing up, I did super well in school. Like I was always that you do not have ADHD. There's no way, because it's just the stereotypical way it affects, people with I'm forgetting the word. There's 2 types of ADHD. Hyperactive, is that one of them?
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't me. I was like inattentive. I did great in school. I wasn't acting up. I could sit in my seat, but I was bouncing my leg. Like it just I didn't fit that. So I was like, something's different about my brain, but I guess it's not this. So I went a really long time thinking, I guess I don't have ADHD. But 2 things sort of pushed me to get my diagnosis. One, my mom is like 55, and the past several years, she's really struggled with memory loss. And I'm like, what's going on here? So she goes to the doctors and gets diagnosed with ADHD, gets treated, and her memory comes back. And I'm like, okay, I need to look into this, because I don't want that to happen to me. And then the other thing, in October, I had like I got spiraled into a depressive episode after my move to Florida. And I was just sitting with myself. It was the first time in my life I wasn't moving. And I was just sitting with myself being like, all right, what was I running from this whole time? And I was like, maybe I have bipolar disorder. Like I need to go talk to someone about this. So I made the doctor's appointment. And in the meantime, I was researching a lot of things. And that's when I was like learning about ADHD and how it might be affecting me differently than other people. So I go to the doctors and I talk to them about this, and immediately off the bat, they're like, oh yeah, you have bipolar. And I'm like, okay, well, can we talk about ADHD? And they're like, if you want to. So then she sort of takes me through the screenings of both of them. And it was like a 30% chance that I had bipolar, and ADHD was like basically 400%. And she was like, oh, maybe this is ADHD. And I'm like, awesome. So long story short, it was one of those things again, where it's just like, okay, I have to like work to understand myself so other people can as well. And both the diagnosis and spirituality were just places of like, I can learn about myself and just understand myself, and then help other people understand me too.
That's so meaningful. Like the line that you just said about, I have to understand myself so that other people can understand me. There's 2 things that really shine through the way you said that. A, it's the process of understanding yourself, which leads to a sort of acceptance. And I think there's a step where we're saying, I'm understanding myself so other people can accept me. But somewhere along the way, you start realizing how you can accept yourself with that. And other people do start accepting you. But I think that there's another, like this symbiosis that happens where, because you start accepting yourself, you need less external validation, and you accommodate yourself a little bit more, and you feel less guilty saying, this is my boundary, or this is what I need. And then it becomes this whole like balance or equilibrium that ends up being found, because that person simply just has to accept that you drew a boundary, and that's perfect. And, the validation that you were able to start with is huge for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's also, I love that you drew this correlation as well of it. For a lot of people, spirituality is the first time where there was like, oh, there is no rules and I can do whatever. And this feels super good. And then now, and again, the past like 3 years or so, when there's been this huge emphasis, especially on female presenting people, to like understand our types of neurodivergent spiciness flavors that there are, which I think all 3 of us have a different one, which I think is pretty funny, just in general. But it's coming up to the surface so significantly, because people are like, oh, this is what's going on. And this is why I never thought against the grain. And I think it's a really interesting prelude to how our society is being forced to change, because the first, of course, it's starting on an individual level of all of us realizing, oh, this has actually never worked for me ever. Also, I need things to matter more than they do now, which is, again, that spirituality component. And then all of that is like pushing societal change, which I think is just and cool in general to see it happening in real time. And I think your story mirrors a lot of that for a lot of people.
And to just support your journey even more, I think it's going to continue. I think this is a hallmark of what we're going to see with the Saturn and Pisces cycle. That's going to be the next 3 years or so. It's going to be kind of a big deal, you know, Pisces being psychology, Pisces being different substances and the subconscious. And then Saturn coming in and saying, hey, we need some rules here that actually support this. We need to bring it in where we can understand it and make it stand up on its own. So one of the ways this could show up that I'm optimistic and hoping for is that there's more support for that area.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. But yeah, I love what both of you said, because it truly is. I mean, I was seeking validation and just reassurance my whole life in areas that couldn't give me that. And I didn't know why. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I was like, someone needs to get it, because I couldn't get it myself. And you're so right. Like, as I learned about myself and got to know myself and understood myself, my need for external validation declined like tremendously. But with that, me being understood and accepted by other people, you know, it was like a beautiful balance, because I think as I started to really accept myself and stopped hoping other people would, I made space and sort of opened the doors for like my people to come find me. Because it's just like, most of the people I meet now, it's just like, oh, I don't even have to explain it. You get it. And so many of the people that I work with and just get to know are also neurodivergent people. So it's like, I don't even have to explain myself. We just get each other. Like, it's just so refreshing, because in even just a simple conversation with a neurotypical person, I find myself having to mask and having to just like play this part and be something that I'm not. But like, talking to my neurodivergent friends, it's just like, oh my God, I can just relax and just talk to you and not act or play a role.
So on that note, obviously a lot of your content creation, especially as of late, has been around how you've found natural ways to medicate your ADHD. So how did you get to that space, and what sort of resources have you found to support that?
Absolutely. So right after I got my diagnosis, like I said, I didn't know much about ADHD or how it affected me yet. So I was in this sort of headspace of, I don't need treatment. It's barely even affecting me. I mean, going into it, my own therapist was like, you might have it, but not enough to really affect you. So I was like, okay, this isn't doing anything to me, until I started to learn about it. And I was like, oh, everything I'm dealing with is coming from this one thing. Maybe I should think about treating it. So I started to research everything. And the first thing my doctor said was, go on Adderall. And I was like, not yet. Just give me a second. And I have like my own reasons for that. My family struggled with addiction a lot, and I just wasn't super comfortable with doing that yet. I had been on medication in the past for anxiety and depression, and that's just for me a whole exhausting process that I didn't want to go through if I didn't have to, of finding the right medication and right dose that makes me feel good. Which, like, obviously more than happy to go that route in the future if that presents itself, but I wanted to try other options first. So I started reaching out to my friends with ADHD and just asking about their experiences with medication, treatment, whatever it was. And 2 of my friends said they tried something like a mushroom complex. And I was like, I need to know more immediately. So I immediately started to dive into like lion's mane and chaga and reishi and just the whole world of it. And my mind was just so happy I was like, why did I never hear about this? This is awesome. Because even if you don't have ADHD, even if you aren't neurodivergent, these are great things to like add into your life. So I was like, okay, gonna try it, because why not? Like, if anything, it's great for my brain, great for my sleep, great for my gut health. It's good for me. So even if it doesn't work, I felt like I had nothing to lose. And that's why I went that route first, because to me, going on medication, it just was scarier to me because of my history with it in the past, of just like feeling like a zombie and not being able to think straight. And I just didn't want to go down that route if I didn't have to. And like I said, with this mushroom complex, to me, it was like, there's no bad side effects. If anything, it'll just be like, I don't really notice a difference. So I order it. I start taking it. The one I got specifically is in the form of like a coffee. It has lion's mane, chaga, L-theanine, and collagen in it. So I was like, cool, let's try it. Day 3, I was like, holy shit, what's this about? I felt like I saw color for the first time. It was wild to me. And I've been on it for I think 2 months now. The first 2 weeks were that like euphoric magic, like I have pixie dust floating around me. This is the greatest thing I've ever experienced. I had so much energy. I would wake up and get out of bed immediately because I was so excited to live, like start my day and just do things before I would like wake up and still be tired. I had executive function to where like I could just think of something I needed to do and be like, okay, let's go do it, and not get overwhelmed by the thought of it. I was remembering to reach out to people. I had this like horrible out of sight, out of mind thing, and a majority of my friends and family are long distance, so I would like not reach out to them for a month because I just forgot that's something I needed to do. Everything. It was just like my sleep schedule, my appetite. Oh my God, I was a new woman. It was really awesome. And then I ran out of it for 2 weeks. And then since going back on it, I still feel incredible, but it's not that same like magic that it was. And I had to sit with myself for that because I was like, was this a placebo effect? Like, was I lying to people? Is it really not this awesome? And I felt really guilty about that. But what I've sort of came to is like the newness has just worn off. Mm-hmm. And it was just such this like dopamine rush for me, the most I've ever felt of like, oh my God, this is awesome. And I still feel great. Like I still have energy. I still get things done. My quality of life has significantly improved than when I wasn't doing this, but the newness has just worn off and it's not as exciting. But I'm like still so grateful that I found this. It's amazing.
I want to say on that too, because I think it's a perfect example of what people experience, especially with spirituality, is when they really get in or they activate a new ability or they really get connected with something. It is so exciting and so thrilling and so wonderful, especially either when they're starting or when they've renewed or when something new happens and they're like exploring a new part of their journey. And then it becomes normal. And that is usually when people are like, oh no, my guides aren't talking to me again or whatever. I'm like, no, actually they're doing everything you've asked them to do. It's just normal now. You're just now, if you want to do something else, you can go to the next new step. But exactly what you described is when the newness wears off, people start to panic that it's not still the same thing that they were experiencing, which it is.
Exactly. I never thought about that before, but yeah, totally.
Yeah. I remember experiencing that myself. Like I got to go through this in the 20 teens or tens. So a little bit before the 3-year period that we're talking about, but I remember being in the same position. So now when we, Emily and I are helping the forgotten storytellers or just working with clients and they talk about like, my guides aren't talking to me anymore. And it's like, well, has it been 3 days since your last breakthrough? And that's kind of how you're just saying, the excitement wears off, but it's not less exciting. You're just integrating a new level and, adjusting to it. It's like moving to a different place. It's really unfamiliar for the first 2 weeks or months or whatever. I'm still getting used to where I am. And then you start being like, oh, it's normal to have this nearby, or it's normal to walk around the house in this way instead of the old layout. And I think that's really important to remind people for both journeys, both the neurodivergent and the spiritual journey, that you may not always feel quite so alien after you really start accepting pieces of yourself in your neurodivergent journey just as much as your spiritual one. Have you found that? Like, do you feel like there's a sort of settling that happens with both? Is there a parallel there or is there a contrast?
Absolutely a parallel. I've really settled into my spirituality so much in the past year, to the point where it's just like, I don't feel the need to talk about it all the time. Like I'm sure that'll hit me too with my ADHD because I've only got diagnosed within the past several months. So this is still very new to me of like, I get it, guys. Like I figured it out. But like with my spirituality, because I've even had like conversations with myself of like, am I still doing this thing right? Like, is everything good? But it's just my life. Like, this is just how I exist. And I constantly, check in with myself and even my guides of like, you're still there, right? And they're like, of course, like, obviously. But it's really refreshing to me, especially now that I know I have ADHD, of just like, I'm good for it to be settled. Like I usually am always chasing like the new feeling in everything. And that's one of the biggest ways my diagnosis has changed my life, of recognizing this like tendency to chase dopamine. And I've just validated myself in that when I feel it, but then also redirect and be like, we don't have to, we're happy here. Remember, like, here's all the awesome things you felt. You still feel those things. It's just normal. You deserve these things. So remind yourself of how awesome they are, but you don't need to switch it up all the time. You're good, babe. Like you're good right here. And that's been really cool to experience and just feel good and the comfortability of it all.
I haven't even had a chance to tell you this story. I think I told Krista this story. So it's super funny. I have been looking into mushroom supplements for like ever. And so I finally purchased one off like Amazon. It's a pill and I really like it. It's good, but I forget even the name of the brand. But literally the next day you posted your video of like, guys, I've been taking
Oh my gosh.
I know. I was like, hey, well, that's validating. And I had a call with Krista right after that. I was like, the validation I just got. So you were my validation of the thing that I had been like dragging my feet on forever. So just to share that with you, because I think that's pretty hilarious.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Super cool. Yeah, I wanted to share that with you. And I think it's fun how guides work in that way. It's like, ha 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 ha. Look at this is how it came through.
And that's a handy thing. Oh, sorry. I was going to say that's a handy thing about social media is that guides can use it to pop something up on your For You page super fast and give you validation or give you resources. So, you know, in the age where social media seems so weird and chaotic and just its own little thing, it is something that if we give it the detachment it deserves, our guides really can come through using it with us.
Definitely.
It's one of the uses for sure. Emily, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say another series that you do, which I think is so helpful to so many, especially younger people, old, you know, in general, but just your like how to human thing. And I think you make it so personable and so easy for people to understand and grasp that I like, what is some of your like motivation for that? And where does that come from? Because I really think it's beautifully done.
Thank you. I'm having so much fun with it. I guess the motivation behind it is just, this is sort of how I view and approach social media is like, what do I want to watch? What would have really helped me? What is it? And, you know, I used to be like a virtual assistant, social media manager. That was so I know the algorithm. I know what you're supposed to do to please it. And I'm like, no, that's not, I don't like that. I'm not doing it. But it's like, you know, your pain points of your audience and content pillars. And I'm like, hey, absolutely not doing that at all. So the way I approach it is like, what do I like to watch? What would have helped me? And what do I want to talk about? What's on my mind? And that's how that whole series started. I literally was just like in my bathroom washing my face. And I was like, I want to talk right now. And I was just like, 2023, I'm figuring it out. Like, that's pretty much just what I said. I'm learning how to take care of myself, because so many, you know, the past couple of months, I've been like, I really don't have much of a grasp on this whole life thing. Like, I don't really know what we're doing here. So I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And so many people resonated with that, because I said something along the lines of like, as someone who grew up in a household where we ate TV dinners and ruminated in our mental illness, I have no idea what's going on, like at all. And it's been really cool to just see people once again. It's like, I'm finding my people when I'm not even trying to. And the things that I talk about are the things that I needed to learn as a kid that I just didn't know, like how to wash your hair correctly, or like how to, I made a video recently on like credit, because I knew nothing about credit. Like I'm branching out, but beyond just like, here's products you can consider using in your skincare routine, or like anything. I talked about grocery shopping, just like things that were never really shown to me ever, which once again, like I talk about this a lot. I don't blame, it's generational trauma. Like I don't blame my parents, because they also weren't taught. Like validating myself and like, yeah, you can be annoyed because you deserve to be taught, but also like, don't blame them. They didn't know better themselves. And same, you know, it goes on and on and on. But it's been really cool to just see people be like, okay, thank you. I didn't know that either. Can you talk about this? And I'm like, let me learn about that first. So it's helping me learn too. It's really been fun.
That's awesome. Cause I know my partner is someone with ADHD, and we're always looking for like, how can he have the opportunity to learn something new? How can we keep this fresh for him? And so I think this is a really cool platform idea where you're following your interests, but people are asking you questions and you get to learn and then solve the problem. Do you find that to be really satisfying for you?
It is like, I just got goosebumps. It's the most satisfying thing ever. I feel like I'm just constantly on a quest, and it's so fun. I love to learn new things in any way possible. So just seeing people be like, hey, have you ever thought of this? Nope. Let me go. Give me 12 hours and I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it.
I love that.
Oh, that's awesome. So with your diagnosis, obviously it's helped you like figure out how to kind of hack your own life in that space, and then you're sharing that with others, which is amazing. But how have you noticed any sort of correlation now that you understand how your mind's working with your spiritual journey and with how that works for you now? Has there been any like, oh, this is what is aligned better, or that's why I can't meditate, or anything like that?
Big on the meditation. Oh my God, so big on the meditation. I think the biggest thing is I stopped trying to force myself to do things the way I thought I was supposed to, which is like a whole lesson in my spirituality, is like, there's no way you're supposed to do it. That's like one of the biggest messages my guides always tell me, like, just do whatever you want to do. It's fine. But with meditating, active meditation, oh God, it's awesome. I just walk and my brain is just like, okay, let's just meditate for a second. Or walking before I meditate, just getting out the little energies that I need to, and then sitting down and actually just meditating. It's been really cool. But also I think, understanding the newness will wear off, and that's okay, has been really big. And I think just the way I both manifest, but also just interact with my guides, of like, something really big in my ADHD is not feeling deserving of the things that I want. And it all meshes together with my ADHD, but I always had this thing of like, I don't think I deserve this. And with my spirituality, with my relationship with my guides, like I was like, I don't deserve people to look out for me like this. What are we doing? Like, are you sure, guys? Or even with manifesting, it's like, no, I do deserve this because I do. I don't have to give a reason. That was always my thing when I was trying to manifest or talk to my guides. I'm like, this is why I deserve this thing that I want. Here you go. And now it's like, I don't feel the need to explain myself or prove myself to anything or anyone, which is, like I said, why I don't really talk about my spirituality anymore, because I don't feel like I need to. I used to feel like I had to like preach it to the choir, talk to everyone I knew about it, to be like, see, this is why I deserve all the things I want, because I'm working hard for them. I'm manifesting really hard. I write 12 pages about everything I want. This is why when I get it, you'll know I deserve it. And it's like, you don't have to do that. So honestly, just, it feels, I don't even know how to put it into words. It's just like, it feels really good. I don't feel like I'm overextending myself or proving myself or doing any of that. It's just like, this is my relationship with spirituality, with spirit, and it's awesome. And I deserve it because I do. And that's not really the best answer, but that's where my brain went.
And I feel
fabulous answer.
I'm gonna say it's the perfect answer. And I think it's going to speak to a lot of people, even in the area of life where people grew up in a practicing religious household to the point where you had to be selfless in everything you do. So manifesting is asking for something. And I remember my own experience was, I want this, but here's how I'm going to use it to help other people, I swear.
Exactly.
And so you're sitting there making it not about you when it really is, and that's okay. And I think, you're being able to say and acknowledge that manifesting works better when you don't feel like you have to justify it. Just let it happen. And when you are provided for, you're able to provide when necessary, when needed, when wanted. So it kind of does, having your needs met, maybe that specific need doesn't pay forward, but something else will. And there is this exchange that happens where it's like, I have everything I need. Oh, hey, look at you. You need something too. I might be able to help with that if I have the energy, if I have the space, if I have the means. And that's perfect. So I think that that's a really beautiful answer that a lot of people are going to be having some clicks with.
Thank you. Yeah, there's one other thing that just came to my mind when you were talking, and it's one way that I think they really do blend together. And I love telling the story because it just happened and it's really cool. But I struggle to remember a lot of parts of my childhood, both due to trauma and ADHD. So there's so many parts that I just don't know what happened. And I want to say this quote because it helped me heal a lot. But my therapist once said, like, you don't have to know what happened to know that it hurt you. And that's all you need to know to heal. So I wanted to say that because that helped me a lot with healing. But I've been asking my guide, just like, please let me remember a little bit. Like, I am so ready for this. I can do it. Like, I'm ready to heal from this. Just let me remember. And it was right around the new year where I was like, every night I go to sleep and I meditate to go to sleep. That's the one way I can fall asleep. And I kept, having this visualization meditation where I was walking, I was hiking, and I like was getting weighed down. So I would take off my backpack or empty my pockets, and there was rocks in either my pack or my pockets. And I'm like throwing these rocks out, and I'm realizing like they're different wounds attached to different people who I was asking to remember what happened there. And it was like the fourth night in a row of this happening. And I was like, these rocks need to stay out of my pockets. I'm done with it. I'm sick of these rocks. Like I'm over it. And I literally felt it was just wild. I've never like heard my guides so clearly. I usually just like feel it or know it, or I heard them be like, okay, so reach out to that person then. You're ready to remember? You're done with it? Reach out to them. And this was it was my father, and I hadn't spoke to him in like a year and a half. I was like, I'm never going to do that again. But my guides were just like, do it then. You ready? Go do it. And I was like, I'll take a rock back maybe. And so I reached out to him. I was just like, I'm going to trust it. I'm going to trust it. I'll reach out. So literally it was like 1:30 in the morning. I texted him, and immediately memories started to come back. And ever since then, like every couple of days I'll get hit with a memory, and I'm like, this is crazy. I'd never experienced that before, where I'll just be like walking and memories come back. And it was really one of the coolest things of seeing how they intertwined, of like, okay, you're doing it. You're ready. I didn't feel like I had to prove that I was ready, but it was just like it was just really cool. And just being granted like my memories back. It was just like, okay, thanks. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And good job trusting your guides, because that is a hard thing to do, especially when it's that deep.
Yeah, that's one I would be going back and forth on for some, just the awkwardness of how out of the blue you would imagine it feels for the other person. And you were like, you know what? I said I was ready. I'm going to follow through with it. That's courage, but it's also guts, which I think is a whole different side of courage.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was one of those things where it's just like leaning into my self-acceptance of like, I'm allowed to do this. And if it feels bad to me and it wasn't meant to happen, I can, put boundaries up, and I don't have to be in this like people pleasing mentality constantly. Like I can do whatever I need to do to protect myself. I can protect myself. So it was really cool.
Yeah. Good job.
Are there any like beginner tips that you would give to someone who's listening to this and they're like, oh man, I'm pretty sure I'm at the beginning of this journey, spiritually or with neurodiversity, and they're just like, I'm pretty sure it's there. I don't know what is the first step to take, or where do I kind of leap to next in my process? What is the easiest first step that you would give to someone who's like really hesitating but feeling like there might be that move for them?
That is a good question. I think just two things. Be so gentle with yourself. So gentle with yourself, because you deserve that. And also, I really recommend exploring the parts of yourself or the parts of spirituality or whatever that you have always so desperately wanted other people to get about you. That's where I started, was like, what have I always wanted people to really understand? And that's where I went first. And I worked to understand that. But also just like follow wherever your heart's taking you. Like that's where you're meant to go. Like for me with spirituality, it started with tarot and then it evolved into so many different things, but start small. It's gonna, especially if you do think you have ADHD or you are neurodivergent, like we get really excited and want to dive in really quickly. And that can quickly lead to like being overstimulated and having to stop for a while. Just take it small, be so gentle with yourself, do whatever you want to do because you have that freedom. That's the best part. It's going to be so different for everybody. So don't feel like you have to fit this mold of like, this is what, even if you're looking at like my journey, it's going to be different. And that's beautiful. It doesn't have to be scary. It's a beautiful, awesome journey of like self-acceptance and just learning so much about yourself and how cool your mind is. I think a lot of people, at least from people that I've spoke to and, you know, myself, when you first get your diagnosis, you're like, shit, this kind of sucks. Like, what did I do to deserve this? It's awesome. Like, I truly feel like my ADHD is one of my like superpowers. Your brain is so cool. The way our brains work is so brilliant. It is literally magnificent. And the only reason that we think otherwise is because we're existing inside of a society that wasn't built for us. Don't let anybody tell you that you need to be different or that your brain should work differently. That's not the case. Your brain is awesome. Just learn to love it. Learn to stop fighting it, you know? Figure out ways that you can work with it rather than working against it. And it's going to be awesome. And I know I'm giving a lot, but let whatever emotions come up, come up. I did not expect the emotions that came up to do so. Like I was angry for a second because I was like, I should have known earlier. You neurotypical people have it easy out here. Like you're just existing like this. And I had no idea. That's not fair. I would have been for like quote unquote further ahead in life if I had known sooner. So many different emotions will come up. And that's why I just say, be gentle. Talk to people, ask people about their experiences. Don't be afraid. Listen to podcasts, do your research, whatever that may be. Like there's not a ton of, that's why I talk about it so much. Cause I looked for so many podcasts or articles or YouTubers and I'm like, nobody's talking about this, at least what I could find. So just find your people, wherever that may be, your communities, and just sit there for a second and be comfy and be gentle and be happy that you're here now.
Yeah. I love that you also acknowledge that there are emotions that you go through because, you know, for different types of neurodiversity, there are superpower moments where it's like, I am the coolest thing that has ever existed because I can do this. But then in again, even in my flavor of neurodivergence, there are not pretty moments. And in the world of social media, sometimes you're in a public place, you're going through a not pretty moment and people decide to film it, which is not a personal experience I've had, but it's something that breaks my heart when I witness it on social media and different platforms. So just learning strategies, I think, is another really helpful tool. So again, finding content creators who are willing to actually talk about it like you, or, you know, people, you have a YouTube as well. And I definitely want to make sure that we tell everybody how to follow you on those different platforms, because you are someone who's offering strategies, who's offering validation, who's offering encouragement. So finding people like Alyson that help you feel validated, seen, and give you the tools you need to be able to thrive through the best of times and the struggle bus times.
Oh, absolutely. And there are so many struggle bus times, but like building a toolbox and just figuring out what tools you can pull out to help you in those moments. And it's going to be so different for everybody, but that's like, be gentle with yourself and be gentle with others because like you have no idea. And also like, it's just, we're all just doing our best out here. But yeah, I totally agree with you.
So share all of your stuff. It's like, where can people find you? What do you do on the various platforms of things? Just share all the things.
Yeah, good question. I do too much all of the time, constantly.
I understand.
On TikTok and Instagram, it's the Alyson LaRue, ALYSON LARUE. Alyson is spelled so differently because my 11-year-old sister decided to spell it when I was born, so that was awesome.
Fun.
On YouTube, it's Alyson LaRue. I post the video version of my podcast there, but then also I do once again, whatever I want to do. I'm getting ready to backpack Europe, and I'm going to be doing like vlogs of my whole trip there, which I'm so excited for. And then my podcast is called Growing Pains with Alyson LaRue. That's on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to it. Excuse me. But I do everything everywhere. Whatever I'm feeling. TikTok, I post too much, just like constantly. Whatever thought pops into my brain, it'll be there. And then Instagram is slightly less than that, but I'm everywhere. I would love for you to come hang out with me. I talk about literally anything. And like we all talked about, if you ever have any specific questions or topics you want me to talk about, I am more than happy to learn about it if I don't already know.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. I know our audience will definitely get a lot of gold from what you share. I appreciate it. And I'm so excited for you to backpack Europe. That's incredible.
Thanks. I'm so excited.
It's so fun. Yeah. And before we sign off or wrap this up, we do have a new moon coming up, right? So let's just touch on the astrology and energy of that really quick for our listeners, because it's a fun one with all this fast energy.
This new moon
Krista,
is pretty. It's a pretty new moon. So I'm saying that because, and it's really kind of auspicious that we're talking about neurodiversity and spirituality during a Pisces new moon. Yeah. I mean, like nothing happens by accident, right? So we've got this Pisces new moon, and really nobody is coming at this new moon as compared to the full moon in Leo, which had Uranus square it. And that was a little bit bumpy. We talked about that last week. This new moon is on February 20th, around 2:06 a.m. Eastern time. Be sure to adjust that for your time zones, or, find out whenever the moon and the sun are at exactly 1 degree and 22 minutes Pisces in your area. And you'll be able to do exactly on the dot if you want to. We also at the same time have Venus, who's still in her exaltation in Pisces. She loves it there, and they love her. She's separating just a little bit from that conjunction that we had on the 15th of February, which at the recording of this podcast has not happened yet, but by the time you hear it, it's probably happening. And so that is going to have us feeling very dreamy, feeling very detached from reality in a lot of senses. I will be posting horoscopes for this. And so it's really helpful to know that you're starting a new cycle. You're really incubating in this primordial potential creation energy. So high manifesting potentials here, but also you want to do it with detachment. I would recommend that you focus on what it feels like to do whatever it is that's on your heart and comes to mind first. If you're looking for a focus on that because you're a little bit more fixed and earthy like I am, check the horoscope. I'll give you the house that you can focus on, the area of life that's probably popping up for you. Focus on what comfort or success or joy or peace feels like in these areas or just in your life. And then try to see what images pop up to associate with that feeling. And maybe you can draw those things into your life sooner rather than later to really help anchor this manifestation to come into your life in the right timing. But it really is about trust, sitting with stillness or active meditation, if that's more your style, and really learning what sounds and what you actually hear and perceive in the silence. So this is, I would play Simon and Garfunkel today, The Sound of Silence. It's quite appropriate. We also have Pluto exactly sextile Venus. So Venus, again, really artistic, really into the whole dance of creation and beauty and love and things like that right now. And Pluto saying, yeah, how can we take that to the next level? How are you limiting yourself and how can you bust through? So this really is a coming out of the metamorphosis phase moment where you're emerging as a butterfly. You're maybe not all the way out yet, but those wings are there. And now we got to figure out, having been a caterpillar forever, how do you use these new things on your back? Which is a metaphor I got from Kelly Surtees a couple of weeks ago, which I appreciate.
Awesome. It feels really nice. I'm actually really excited for this new moon. I know it is a watery new moon, but it feels like going swimming. And that's my favorite thing to do in the entire world. So I'm excited for that.
It's like swimming in like a fountain of Venus or Aphrodite, or, that Aphrodite emerging from the sea painting in her shell. That's very much an image that comes to mind, especially with Venus being exalted in Pisces, the ocean. So
super ironically, and I literally just realized this because I did not realize the night that the new moon was. I'm actually surprising my husband. I don't think he's going to listen to this episode because we are really busy this week. So I'm going to just get on here. But I'm surprising him with a trip to our favorite hot springs, which just recently opened up since COVID.
Oh my gosh.
On that night.
Yeah.
So that's really funny. I love that.
I'm going to be preparing to fly out to present about storytelling at a magical conference, literally a conference about magic and the magic of, I'll be talking about the magic of storytelling and how to use that as a magic technique in Detroit. So this is happening in my 5th house as well. So I'll be going on vacation to a magic conference to be a speaker about books and how they're magic.
Amazing.
I love that.
It works
That's
really
so
well.
Yeah.
Well, Alyson, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it, and having you here is the best. And thank you for all you do for the podcast all the time.
Of course.
You're
Thanks for
awesome.
having me on. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want our listeners to know? Anything that's coming up that you're doing? Any projects you're working on? Or just letting us know one more time your contact so that they can follow you?
I just, like I said,
Just gonna
always,
go backpacking.
yeah, always something new. I do have a couple of new spots opening up. If you have a podcast or YouTube and you want an editor, hit me up at the Alyson LaRue on Instagram, TikTok, Alyson LaRue on YouTube, Growing Pains Podcast with Alyson LaRue, everywhere. But thank you again. Cool. It was so awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. Or if you're watching us, our watchers, thank you for being here as well. Again, we have a lot of fun stuff coming up in our Patreon this month. This month's video we're recording very soon, and it's going to be a fun one. So join the Patreon, and you can also suggest episode topics. We have a fun episode topic coming up for next week that has been voted on. So if you want to add more votes, we have more options. Go ahead and check us out in the Patreon. And yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Have a happy new moon. And we hope that you
makes of magic.
Oh, I loved seeing that live. That was awesome.
We were all from the, I couldn't even get that. I feel like you went and then I went and then the countdown, everybody was even off this week. So apologies for that to all of you listeners who did not get to see that kerfuffle.
It was beautiful. We got it.
It's confusing. It's Piscean. We're doing exactly what we should be doing.